So what makes me cranky about the fate of the Furious? Not everything can be hacked. I get that the Fast and Furious franchise has basically become Mission Impossible at this point, but this is worse than Jason Bourne when it comes to the computer magic. If you could remotely operate everything on a nuclear submarine, we wouldn't cram a bunch of people into the damn things for months at a time. It was already the biggest problem in Fast 7, but this movie takes it, and everything else frankly, to a whole new level of ridiculous. Worse, they actually tricked me into thinking they were going to correct that issue because they recognized they had the magic hacking device that can find anyone anywhere on the planet instantaneously, went to use it, and it didn't work. Great, I thought. Problem solved. Good job, movie. But within a few minutes, they fixed it and proceeded to go ever more ridiculous with the hacking stuff. Not that ridiculous hasn't already been a pretty solid descriptor for the Fast and Furious movies up to this point, but somehow this one just finally broke my ability to suspend my disbelief. The last one had already teetered on the edge of it, mainly because of the aforementioned hacking thing, but it was still fun and funny and had an extremely touching finale that made up for a lot of its shortcomings. Plus, you could kind of give some of the issues a pass knowing they had to try and salvage whatever they could after Paul Walker died abruptly during filming. Frankly, I think it would have been a good place to stop with these movies. I know Vin Diesel wanted to do 3 trilogies, and these are making enough money to ensure that will happen, but this one just felt different from the others. The team dynamic felt off, the direction and editing wasn't as good, and Diesel and his crew have reached a level of invincibility that there's just no tension to be had anymore. When even Tyrese Gibson's character can get dunked in the frigid waters of Siberia and not at least complain that he's cold afterwards, it's kinda hard to connect with them anymore. Even the magic they do with these cars has gotten completely out of hand. They have a Lamborghini driving full speed on ice. And it's not like some tricked out Lambo with special super snow tires installed. They literally call it a show model. My Camaro is lucky to get traction on an icy road that has already been plowed and sanded. So I know full well that Lambo isn't outrunning a nuclear sub on a frozen lake. And again, I know it sounds silly to complain about over-the-top stuff in a Fast movie, because that's what they're all about, but the action was just so much more fun to watch in previous installments. This one has a ton of shaky cam and quick edits that not only mucked up the fight scenes, but also the car stuff, which has always been the one thing they made sure to showcase as clearly as they could. In this one, the longest takes of the cars are just them driving on straight roads. When it comes time to do any actual stunts, it's cut so choppily they could have had the cars on rails and you'd never know. It's really sad because there's some neat in-car perspective shots that would have made for some really thrilling action sequences, but they only last a second or two, so it nullifies the effect. It might as well just be the Transformers at this point. Perhaps more importantly, though, is what I said about the team dynamic being off. Family became a big theme in these movies, and the interplay of this particular family is part of the reason it was so easy to just go along for the ride. With this one, something just feels missing, and presumably that thing is Paul Walker's character, Brian. He was always a sort of grounding element, both in terms of his persona and his relative ability in a series full of cartoon characters like Vin Diesel's invincible, inexhaustible Dominic Toretto. They give his absence lip service in a few ways, but it's hard to roll with the Dom has betrayed the team plot and not have Brian come back to help chase him down, at least not without lots of talk of why they won't do it. Michelle Rodriguez, aka Letty, has a strong moment when it comes up, but it's more like a fourth wall break than an actual genuine discussion. You can almost hear the writers saying, yeah, we all know why they should call him for this, but you know why they can't. It would have been so much better if they had spent more time at the start establishing how they don't want to drag Brian back into life no matter what the cost. Could have also given this conflict real stakes because we know that eventually they might come to a point where they have to choose between leaving their friend in peace and having to face losing Dom without his help. It would even make for a more interesting way of bringing Jason Statham in, since it would provide a potentially least worst option for them. Put Brian at risk, lose Dom, or work with the guy who killed your friend in the last movie. Instead, Kurt Russell is just like, oh yeah, it'll be fun to watch Statham and The Rock throw insults at each other, so he's working with you now. And given Dom's reasons for working against his family, I kind of wonder if it weren't originally going to be Brian that betrayed the team in the first place, and they just had to rewrite it after Paul Walker died. The other problem with the betrayal is that it includes the stupid, can't tell anybody why it's happening, just random other people who can help me out trope, which is always worthy of an eye roll. It's not all bad, though. There are some really good moments, and there are cool set pieces, as always. Perhaps the best belonging to the aforementioned Jason Statham. In fact, the one big set piece with Statham could probably be made into its own hilariously awesome movie that I actually kind of want to see now. The back and forth with The Rock is still funny too, of course, but if you were hoping for a big physical rematch between them, you're going to be disappointed. Adding Charlize Theron is always good too. She has an interesting motivation for her particular brand of villainy, but again, if computers weren't magic, she would be no threat to any of them. So yeah, I didn't hate this, but I can't say I really enjoyed it like I do some of the others. Despite all the callbacks to the previous films and the strong internal conflict they give Dom and the funny banter between Statham and The Rock, it just didn't do it for me. It never came together. It's still got all the stuff you've come to expect from these movies, so I can't fault anybody from really enjoying it, but this might be where I get off the ride, and since you can apparently dive out of a car going 200 miles an hour without getting hurt, I suppose that won't be much of a problem if I do. If you're a fan, I'm sure you're going to see this in the theater either way, but you might want to wait to save some cash and save it for a matinee. That's what I thought about The Fate of the Furious anyway. Feel free to disparage the franchise for being loud and dumb, and or lambast me for not thinking Fast 8 is the greatest movie ever made in the comments below. Of course, if you want to help out the Cranky family, give my channel a boost by hitting those like and subscribe buttons to inject some of that sweet YouTube nos into it.